the pressure difference between the arteries and the veins. Okay. Lastly, here we're going to talk about blood pressure, flow, and resistance, and shock. What that is. So blood pressure is simply the measure of the force or that's pushed against the walls of the arteries. So in the lumen or in the center of the blood vessel, the force that's pushed against the side. We talked about the systolic and the diastolic in the arteries. Blood flow, different term, is the amount of blood that reaches the tissues, okay? And resistance is the sum of many factors that oppose the movement of blood. So high blood viscosity, blood length, etc. You can see a few there. So cardiovascular homeostasis. Hold on. Hello? I'm filming a video right now. Can you let me? I know, I have to film this video.
How much longer?
Get out. Get out. All right. Little interruption. That's why I locked my door, but he has a lock or a key that can open it. Yay. Okay, so blood flow is hard to measure. How can doctors measure the amount of blood that's reaching your tissues? Can't really be done. So that's why we measure blood pressure, because indirectly we're measuring blood flow because they're related. So this is the equation that shows how blood flow and blood pressure are related. It's Ohm's law. Blood pressure, BP, equals the flow of blood times the resistance. And if you this was the word, solve for blood flow, it equals blood pressure over resistance. So a few ways we can increase blood flow. You can increase blood pressure to increase the amount of blood reaching the tissues, or you can decrease the resistance. Exercise, which is something that's good for your cardiovascular health, right? It does both. It increases your blood pressure temporarily, okay? Also decreasing resistance, which makes blood reaching your tissues easier. Peripheral resistance, let's talk about that, is dependent on factors like the viscosity of blood. So if your blood is more thick, it's going to be a higher resistance. It also is dependent on the length of the blood vessels. If you have more blood vessels for blood to go through, that's going to increase the resistance. There's an interesting note at the bottom of this slide here. Obese people generally have higher blood pressures because they have more blood vessels for the blood to get through. So they increase the resistance here, which that is going to cause blood flow to increase and blood pressure. Listen to this. For every just 2.2 pounds of fat gained, your body has to make 400 miles of additional blood vessels. Kind of amazing. All right. Think about that the next time you eat a donut. Just kidding. Okay, so where was I at? So also affecting resistance is diameter of the vessels, okay? These first two, the viscosity of the blood and the length of the blood vessels, you can't really control that from a day-to-day basis. But, like it says here, unchangeable from moment to moment. But the diameter of the blood vessel can change quickly. Your body can change it if needed. If you need more blood flow, they can vasodilate or vasoconstrict to push blood through at a quicker rate. Circulation. That's just essentially your pulse, how fast your blood is circulating, or how many heartbeats you have. You can take the pulse. Usually we take the pulse in the radial artery or the common carotid artery. And it's the result of the expansion and recoil of the arteries after each systole. So it usually, underline, it's about the same as the heart rate. Circulation, when we talk about that, how we get blood pressure, it's in the arteries when the ventricle is in diastole and systole. Hypertension is high blood pressures. About 50 million Americans have high blood pressure. And it's the most common disorder affecting the cardiovascular system. And it can lead to other things like arteriosclerotic vascular disease, heart failure, kidney disease, and stroke. So it should be taken seriously. There's different categories of severity of hypertension. It could be elevated systolic or diastolic or both. Normal blood pressure, we talked about that, less than 120, less than 80. There's a pre-hypertension levels, stage 1 hypertension, and stage 2. Stage 2 obviously being the most severe. There's also opposite of that. Hypotension is where the blood pressure is too low. And now there's a difference between hypotension and just having low blood pressure. Hypotension is more serious, where essentially the body cannot meet the metabolic demands of the body. And it can cause dizziness, fatigue. But essentially, if you have hypotension, it can eventually lead to loss of function in organs, resulting in shock. What this is saying, like a lot of women have naturally low blood pressure, like myself. This doesn't mean you're in danger of going into shock in your organs. Speaking of shock, shock is just simply when fluids, nutrients cannot reach the tissues of your body, which is a problem because you can't then perform functions that you need to. There are four basic types of shock. Hypovolemic shock. Essentially, the blood volume has been reduced dramatically. Cardiogenic shock due to poor heart function. Obstructive shock, something is blocking the pathway of blood. And vascular shock, essentially too much dilation in your veins. Anaphylaxis causes this, massive allergy attack, or sepsis. Septic shock, blood poisoning shock, actually causes over 100,000 deaths a year. And it's most common cause of death in the hospital critical care units. And there's a video on here that I found, a fun little video about hypovolemic shock, if you want to watch that. So when somebody's in shock, your body will work through negative feedback mechanisms to hopefully restore your body back to homeostasis, get that blood flowing properly. So how your body responds is to increase the heart rate and the force of contraction. Other tissue beds will vasoconstrict, essentially cutting off blood flow to non-essential units, get it to the brain, etc. And then hormones are going to be involved heavily to restore balance. And the details of this, I'm not too concerned with you knowing. Just know what shock is and the four types, and how the body responds to shock. So here, shock. Your blood pressure has plummeted. The blood flow is plummeted. How your body responds. Increasing heart rate and the force of contraction. You're going to, depending on the type of shock, either vasoconstrict or vasodilate. A lot of hormones are going to be released to essentially conserve water, conserve salt, which are both are crucial to maintaining life. This is just another little pathway of how your body responds to maintain homeostasis. In emergency medical situations, I know they give you a shot of epinephrine. It's a hormone. Actually, it's a neurotransmitter that will cause your body to then cause perfusion of liquids, nutrients into the tissues. I keep on hand an EpiPen, which is a shot of epinephrine, because I am sensitive to a few allergens, and just kind of as a precaution, I carried it on myself in case myself or somebody I know needs it. But if your body's not able, and a lot of times your shock is so severe your body can't maintain homeostasis quick enough, and if that doesn't happen, like in case of an allergic reaction to peanuts or something, which is a pretty severe anaphylactic reaction, I mean, organs can fail very quickly. Kidneys, livers, coma, and the damage could be permanent. So shock should be taken very serious. Okay, so that is the end of chapter 21, the blood vessels.